Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Jack Threlfall Show. Apologies for the slightly cinematic lighting I've got going on today, but it'll all change when the sun goes down, as the Arctic Monkeys would say. This video, we're talking about the Australian Grand Prix, the most chaotic Grand Prix of the year so far, and the most chaotic in a very, very long time. 3 red flags, record-breaking. Maybe not a surprising winner, but just about everything else that happened was pretty unpredictable. So where were we before the 2023 Australian Grand Prix? What were the kind of context clues? The regularly scheduled programming had resumed in Formula One. A dominant car, a dominant team were leading from the front. Sergio Perez had played a massive role in Max's title in 2021, but maybe less so in 2022. The whole team's quality, from Max to the pit wall to the factory, and Newey's ground effect machine, there was not much that could be done to prevent Max from winning that second title, and it's looking similar this year. The most accurate people in sports analytics are not me, not the journalists you see on TV, but the bookies. And those with money on the line will tell you that a £100 wager at this point for Max Verstappen to win the 2023 title, £100 down, you'll get £12.50 back in a winning bet. Parlay that then with a Red Bull Constructors title win, and the £100 will get you 17 back, right? Not great. They're pretty certain it's going to happen, and they're probably right. So it's a bit of an understatement to say that that sense of danger and tension is slightly lacking at the top of the table, but we did have signs of light in the Saudi desert. Perez closed the gap at the top of the table to only 1 point, decided by the fastest lap. We can see him in that interview finding out that Max had taken it away from him. He was not amused. That little bit of tension inside the team is kind of nice. The only problem is that obviously Perez lost position to Alonso down into turn 1, so that first lap kind of grit and aggression you need to scare people off in your championship fight seemed a little bit lacking. And the only reason Perez really won that race is because you had Verstappen starting back down in 15th, right? And they were, 5 seconds away at the end? So that's what they need to have a competitive World Championship fight, make Max start 15th every time. Optimistic fans longed for this kind of tension at the top, right? It's kind of boring when everyone's friends, and you've always got to have Fernando Alonso in there pissing people off and making it exciting. So we're lacking a bit of competition at the front, but where we're finding that competition this year is in the battle for second between Ferrari, Mercedes, and Aston Martin. The Ferraris, new boss, firmly engaged in their fight. They got second place, of course, last year, rising from a really poor season in 2020. Moving in the right direction, but they may have had a car to win the title last year, and will they get that chance again in the next decade even? I mean, for Ferrari, the team has the talent, they have the fans, they've got the motivation of really everyone that watches Formula One. They like a fast Ferrari, but it's going to come down to the things that don't require talent: the work, the effort, the consistency, the attention to detail, all the combined force of everyone in that Scuderia. That's what's going to win them the points, and we know that points mean prizes. And they're pretty good at doing it, right? That's the problem with competing for the World Championship. You can be really, really good and still be second best, and it makes you look bad. The new competitor on the scene, though, that we've got this year, the rise of Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin. Fernando, back to the front of Formula One, the old dog, full of pace, full of confidence, full of love from the media, and Aramco logos all over the track and the car. P3 in Jeddah and Bahrain. He's going to Australia full of beans, ready to show that the Silverstone outfit can do it anywhere in the world, not just the tracks that seem to suit them from testing. Race fit and in form, we're going to need Lance Stroll to make a useful rear gunner if they're going to go for that P2. P3 would be a disappointment for them, the way that Aston Martin are looking, and they were way back down, I think P7 or P8 last year. Brutal. For most part, Stroll is going to need, Lawrence Stroll that is going to need to make an expansion to the Aston Martin trophy cabinet, because podiums are looking likely at most weekends. The Mercs are a bit more of a tricky one. They've got a car design that's beautiful. It's just a shame that it's such a doggone track. There's little beauty to be found on the inside of that stunningly beautiful car. For Lewis Hamilton, at least, right? It's rare that Lewis is that critical of his car when you've got a teammate who is really not that much, or not as critical, should I say. You know, George is putting in faster times on the stopwatch to kind of prove his point that he's not having as many problems. No racing driver in the history of time has enjoyed losing to their teammate, and Lewis is no exception to that, right? For the team, it's nice to have both drivers be happy, right? Particularly a team like Mercedes. They can use that, positive competitive spirit between the drivers to push both drivers and the team further forward, right? Use that positive element of a rivalry without turning it into a kind of Nico Rosberg situation. So heading into Australia, Lewis needed a statement result, right? A points haul for confidence, if nothing else, to get the team back on his side of the garage, to feel that Lewis is going to be the one for Mercedes to bring the points home, to get that kind of clout. Then we go down to what is now Formula 1.5, if you're a fan of that subreddit. This is what their table was looking like going in. Give me while I turn my paper over here. Williams, happy with where they are, happy that they're nearing the midfield. They've got their new ex-Mercedes man at team principal. Alpine looking unlikely to match their P4 from last year, particularly with Aston Martin moving up. Zach Brown just seems like he's trying to put out fires at the moment. Of course, we've had a technical shake-up at the top of McLaren, so we'll see whether that can make an impact, because none of their sponsors will be happy with Q1 exits, particularly at the price that the McLaren sponsors will have bought in at, right? They'll have been thinking that this is their team to, carry their brand forward, and you can't do that from P17. Alfa Romeo have plateaued at best, even though Valtteri Bottas is always looking happy. Their boost from being a Ferrari customer team in 2022 hasn't really paid off. Haas have kept quali pace as a keen strength, but for the most part, they do really remain a bit of a comedy side character. AlphaTauri searching for pace in their car, and they're finding the Nick De Vries hype train to be a little derailed early in its journey, but maybe back on track, hopefully later in the year. So then let's get into what did we see at Albert Park? What is the debrief, right? Bang, lights go out, and it's a rare poor getaway from Max Verstappen. George Russell sneaks past into turn one, closely followed by Lewis Hamilton, who takes all the motivation he needs from seeing his teammate move forward, sticks a wheel up the inside of Max Verstappen, driving a little bit Verstappen style to push him out wide on the exit, but all fair in Formula One. Seeing his teammate move forward, as I said, was all the motivation that Lewis needed. Sergio Perez trying his best to make moves out of the back. Max gets put in a little Ferrari sandwich. Lewis dives for the inside, and Sainz gets ambitious near the wall. Nick De Vries gets sent for some airtime through turn 4 as he tags Esteban Ocon's rear wheel, and Leclerc skids out in the background after a racing incident with power boy Lance Stroll. A brutal one for the Tifosi to take, a mistake at the first lap, and it's game over in the gravel. Safety car out, rolling restart pending, flags and restarts on lap 1, a teaser for what was to come. The restart gets underway. Sergio Perez bears the brunt of the pressure as he looks to make his way forward. No huge headlines happening here, apart from Perez picking his way through. Then, lap 7, Alex Albon loses the rear on the entry into a fast blind corner. Bang, safety car number 2, gravel on the track. Ooh, Mercedes. Strategy team, safety car, let's get Russell in. Let's play a blinder. Get him in first under the safety car. Leave Max and Lewis out on on old tyres. Get Russell in on new hards. Give him the advantage. Even with a slower car, we can fight for the win here. That's what Mercedes are thinking. Then boom, safety car. Sorry, mate. Upgraded to a red flag. Not going to happen, mate. Your strategy's in the bin, but luckily you left Lewis out, so we're going to be okay. Lewis inherits the lead. George inherits a hell of a lot of work to do. Pierre Gasly and Alpine were also one of the major strategy winners from staying out under this red flag in the first reshuffle of the race, giving them time for the first time this year on the main broadcast and a chance at a points haul. Restart comes and goes after the Albon red flag. No crazy drama, but as you will know from watching the highlights, the kind of onboard footage, the level of overtaking, of battles, of back and forth racing, and the tension on track was really, really great. They'd done a good job at the Australian Grand Prix in front of a packed and very, very merry Australian crowd. So Max gets to position into the famous turn 9-10 chicane, the spot of Sainz's big moment last year. Little could be done to prevent the Dutchie from getting back to the front after the weak start. Turn of the page. Then George Russell overtakes Gasly. Sainz overtakes Stroll on laps 14 and 15. Looking good for Russell, right? He's moving through the field. Sorry, mate. Your car's on fire. Time to go. Power unit failure, putting a stop to his climb back through the field, causing a short virtual safety car. But by the standards of this race, that was all calm. Verstappen maintains a comfortable lead Up until lap 46, he has a minor moment, he claims, purely in assistance to the Melbourne groundskeepers, but it has echoes of Hungary last year. He was so far ahead this time, though, that even taking a trip through the gravel to do some mowing didn't cause him many issues. Now, his teammate Sergio Perez continues to flow through the field with the Super DRS with his tyre management skills and brave overtaking. The changes to the Albert Park circuit were in full effect, allowing Perez to exploit that gap in rear speed that the Red Bull has to the rest of the field. Arguably, what had to be the best move of the race, the moment of the race, the overtake of the race, came from Carlos Sainz on Pierre Gasly, hard on the brakes with a lane switch, diagonal entry line into the inside of turn 3. Lovely stuff, compliment from the engineer. But that positivity would not last long for the Spaniard. Foreshadowing, Jack. Great script writing. There was also a great battle between Lando Norris and Nico Hülkenberg, ending up with a trip to the gravel for the German and Lando Norris gaining that position. He claimed it was a bit dirty, but I think it was good to see Norris up for the fight. Despite the gap never reaching overtaking distance, we also had a battle between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. Not only was there real tension on the timing sheets, but on the broadcast, we were always watching, is he going to dip in that 1.3 seconds, 1.7 seconds, ERS charging back and forth, right? A tricky battle, old school Formula One by the ground effect standards, right? Felt like we were almost back in 2017-18 kind of world, right? Where a lot of it was down to those kind of strategy battles. Just as the final stint lull seemed to be kicking in, we seem to be into the closing stages of the race. Bang! Kevin Magnussen's rear wheel says goodnight, smashes the outside of the barrier, or I suppose the inside of the barrier in a way. And I'd love to give a shout out to the fan who eternalized that moment by writing, Kevin Magnussen was here on the rule. Anyway, that gives us red flag number 2. So the first one, Alex Albon. Second one, Kevin Magnussen. Late race restart, echoes of Azerbaijan, and we did have Michael Massey back in the paddock this weekend. A big reason of why I have any viewers on this channel was my interview with Jonathan. Long time since Michael Massey had left Formula One, but he was back. And it felt like he was back in the race direction room, even though he wasn't, he was just watching. But, you know, kind of funny and plenty of content for the commentary team to be talking about because they just love him so much. Anyway, red flag, time to clean up the track and the arm of the guy in the stands who was hit by the piece of Kevin Magnussen's disintegrating carbon fibre. He was cut up a little bit, but I think he enjoyed the memory. Okay, nearly done. All we need now is a final clean restart. We can get the post-race starty parted. Melbourne, a beautiful city to go partying in. Unfortunately, the late post-race party getting started was easier said than done. Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso, Sainz, Gasly, they're your top 5, right? Red flag restart. I think we had 2 laps to go at the time. Bang, mad dash down to turn 1, bottleneck for everyone. Smooth to the front 2, Sainz goes for the inside. Alonso's round the outside, was trying to get past Hamilton, but now he's just trying to keep his car clean. Uh-oh, knock knock, Spaniard on Spaniard crime. The Aston's turned around, Carlos Sainz mega fuming. Doesn't think he did anything wrong, but you've put a car in the gravel through contact, always going to go to the stewards. Meanwhile, in the background, Perez and Gasly take to the grass and the gravel to avoid contact. Yuki Tsunoda's picking off positions anywhere he can. The onboard footage, I don't know, it was missed in the broadcast, but someone, I think it was on the Reddit or on a YouTube channel, look at the onboard from Yuki Tsunoda at the end of that race. It was incredible, the skill he had to keep the car clean in those moments. After we've got the contact from Sainz and Alonso, Logan Sargent locks up his front, hits Nick De Vries, sends him flying, DNF out. Should have been a post-race penalty, but I think we're over our statute of limitations now. Then, Pierre Gasly, we've seen him go flying through the gravel with Perez. He's trying to get back on the track. He is the victim of a frog-on-frog crime as the 2 Alpines tangle, both in the barrier, double DNF, carbon, bits of car everywhere. We're done. Otmar Safnauer's hope for the points all go into a threader, and a record-breaking 3rd red flag is out. Oh, this is a real mess. Now, I've got what I think is the best illustration of what I'm about to do on screen now. And shout out if you're a fan of the show. So here's my best attempt to explain in as complicated terms as possible what happened with that red flag, right? Because the lap to the grid before the restart was following a red flag, it counts as a completed lap in the race. There would be no further position changes, but that lap would still happen, right? So you had the red flag after the restart, after the Magnussen red flag. That red flag, then they still have to restart the race, but in restarting the race, the cars have to drive around once to even get to what would become the starting grid. When they drive around that one time, if you're already on the last lap of the race because Verstappen had crossed the line in the pit lane, it was game over, right? No more racing could take place. But because of the chaos, no official order could be established. So things like the Alonso spin didn't go into the official timing record. Therefore, like in Zhou's crash in Silverstone 2022, the order would go back to the order at the time of the Magnussen crash. But you had DNF'd cars. For any car that had survived got the positions that those 4 DNF'd cars used to have because they couldn't complete that extra lap at the end of the race, even if it wasn't their fault. So the DNF cars, they're gone. Anyone who's still alive, there's 4 positions. Throw that on the end, then Carlos Sainz gets a 5-second penalty for hitting Alonso, even though Alonso doesn't face the consequences of getting hit. He gets to keep P3, Sainz still gets the penalty. Don't see how that's fair. But also, because it's then effectively like a safety car lap, that final lap of the race, everyone's all bunched together. So you put 5 seconds on top of that. Suddenly, Sainz moves from, I believe, P4. Yeah, it must have been P4 before the crash. He's in the bin. He's thinking, hold on a minute. 5-second penalty is all you've given me, and now I'm out of the points. 0 points for Ferrari in this round. Brutal. Then, what else have we got? Your Zhou, your Hulkenberg, your Yuki Tsunoda, they're all gaining. Suddenly, Sergio Perez is looking at this race result. He's thinking, I've started in the pit lane and I'm finishing 5th. Driver of the day, thank you very much. But, for the most part, it is logical. Like, there is a rule structure to it. But it's just tricky for the FIA, right? When they have this pressure to get things right, they're always going to lean on the side of safety. And it was kind of the driver's fault that there was this big mess up at the end, right? The FIA is not in the cars. They're not causing the crashes. And you can't make the argument, well, they shouldn't have red flagged it, because all that happens after a red flag is a standing start. And you do a standing start every race. So if you're going to start claiming that standing starts are unsafe because they lead to crashes, then you're going to have to do IndyCar starts and start the race, rolling, right? It doesn't make sense. So that argument is incoherent. Moving on, though, looking to the future, not the past, as is rare in Formula One journalism, what information do we have now looking forward to Imola, right? The Ferraris are going to have to utilize that feeling of injustice, that rage, that annoying feeling that they're underperforming. It's going to be in front of the home fans, right? They need to show their class, give the fans something to believe in. You need to sell hats, Ferrari, and you do that by giving people something to believe in. High downforce layout at Imola. It will necessitate upgrades and adaptations throughout the field. We're going to see some different cars, different bits. That's always cool. Hopefully there's a shake-up there. I think it's a fallacy when people say that might not favour Red Bull because we've seen them, push the boundaries on top speed. It's like, well, the reason they push the boundaries on top speed is because that's the faster way to go around those tracks. A team that's been able to adapt their car to that track will also be able to adapt it to the track at Imola, right? So I believe fully that the Red Bull will be super fast on high downforce and on low downforce because they have the time to adapt the car with the missing Chinese Grand Prix. Yeah, it's got to be another Red Bull victory, right? Here is your current drivers table. We can always rely on Wikipedia to give us that beautiful color coding. What do we see, right? First and foremost, you've got that gap at the top. But the thing that stands out to me is after 3 races, 18 out of 20 drivers are in the points. And the only 2 that aren't are the 2 rookies, right, who have only completed, well, Nick DeVries has 4, Logan Sargent has 3 races in their entire career. So 18 out of 20 drivers, right, 90% of drivers have at least 1 point. Couple that with the fact that every team has at least 1 point, right? Because, of course, Sargent and DeVries, their teammates have scored. And it's the earliest time in a very, very long time that we've got to the 3rd race in the season and you've had this distribution. There's a gap at the top, then maybe a further gap from 3rd now, really, with the Ferrari mess up. I was going to say cock up there, but I'm going to leave that in the video. Very, very cool. Alonso, for me, he's standing out. 3 P3s in 3 races, right? Pretty cool. 3rd word title, anyone? Maybe. The spirituals will get behind that one. I've got written in my notes here, Fernando Alonso's season so far is like an Irish person pooing in a forest. Tree turds. Very clever, right? Good comedy. Get me on SNL. Okay, what else we got? Better wrap this thing up. Charles Leclerc, 10th in the World Championship. That is a bit of a sticky one. He was leading at this point last year. Lewis Hamilton, P4, with a healthy gap to George Russell thanks to that power unit blow-up. On the constructors' side, Ferrari, they're taking that pressure to defend their P2 and it's not looking very good. We know that Charles Leclerc is a demon in qualifying. If he can get in Charles Leclerc qualifying form around Imola, it will be a chance to get him back near the front because he'll be able to defend that position on a circuit that's hard to overtake on, right? So he can exploit that qualifying pace to his advantage. Could be the path to the podium for the red team. Past that, pretty early, the midfield's looking tight this year. Anyone's game, really. Upgrade rates, driver form, mid-season development, those are going to be the keys. Overall, I'd give it maybe like an 8.6 out of 10, the Australian Grand Prix. Pretty damn good. Complicated rule bollocks, but a lot of people's experience of that is the commentary scene getting it wrong and adding confusion instead of taking it away. This is why they need to hire me, but that's a different video. In looking to the future, though, there's a whole heap of great racing action beyond Formula One. In April on the calendar, we had over 1,000 position changes, very hard phrase to say, in an epic Texas Motor Speedway IndyCar race last weekend, one of the finest oval races outside of the 500 that we've seen in IndyCar for a very, very long time. And of course, some excellent coverage from friend of the show, Tom Gaymore, on that aspect. They then head to the iconic Long Beach Street Circuit on the 16th of April. That's going to be a great event. They're going to be joined by the IMSA Championship, right, who also throw pretty damn good races. NASCAR, this weekend, they're heading back to the Bristol Dirt Speedway, or the Bristol Speedway that they've covered in dirt to make it more exciting. Always a very cool spectacle. We had Kyle Busch win there last year, I believe Larson the year before, but it's anyone's game, right? It's really cool to see that chassis package, the whole design package that they have in NASCAR applied to a dirt race, right? It's weird, but it's cool that they do it once out of the year. MotoGP, Kota and Jerez both coming up this month. You've got the Ducati rider Bastianini back from injury, championship favourite Pecco Bagnaia. He's looking for a solid result after falling off in Argentina. VR46 rider Marco Bezzecchi took the win there. World Endurance Championship, they're heading to Portimao, where MotoGP started its season, and then also to Spa this month. WRC, they're heading to Croatia, and of course Formula One will be in Baku. Now we've also got Formula E heading to Berlin for a double header. Plenty to get into there. Most importantly for me, though, this weekend is Masters weekend, and it's time to see the kings of the game get back on those mystical playing surfaces at Augusta National. Will it be as exciting as the Australian Grand Prix? Maybe not. But if you know your golf, you'll be watching. For this video, though, I think I'm all wrapped up. I think I've got through all my notes. I've managed to look up at the camera maybe 3 times throughout the entire video and away from my notes. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I'll be back next week with more of the Jack Throttle Show.